Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, it's my cohort in cars talking about Warhammer companion. It's Tom. How you doing, buddy?
Hello, friends.
You know, Tom, somebody in the comments mentioned that we're like in those post wrap up shows that it's like the best version of the Sonic commercials ever.
Absolutely.
And I completely agree with that. God, I wish you lived like closer to me. I really do. Cause we should just shoot shows. We would shoot shows from the car all the time. Like if you ever end up
Driving
back here,
270, just driving 270.
yeah, we would do a Warhammer or like, cohort in cars talking Warhammer regular.
Cohort in cars, getting coffee, talking Warhammer.
Absolutely. Like it would happen. But it's not just the two of us this week. Also joining us, the one, the only, it's Mr. Stone Monk from the Mortal Realms. How you doing, brother?
What's up, everybody? Happy to be on board.
We are happy to
I wish I was just in the back seat or even in the trunk of that episode, just shouting opinions out and obscenities.
Just
like
just they kidnapped me.
You can only imagine what the pre-show, the behind the scenes to that show was.
Like literally behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Well, what I'll say is, if you like, I don't think you could see it real well in that particular show, but like, just like in the previous one we had done from NashCon or whatever, the back seat, there was no room for you in there. If you were in there, you would have further broken Tom's display board. Yeah, as I had
God beast the hell out of that.
Absolutely. I had just so we're clear here, just start us off with Tom's catchphrase. I had my very heavy toolbox that I use for teaching, for carrying all my paints and figures and everything in, sitting up on top of my army that I never got out to play with once all weekend, but oops. And as Tom rounded a corner, it slid off and like crushed right into his display board, and I was like, sorry, man.
As I said to him, it was the perfect end of the day.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Just hilarious. That's just life.
We came very close to doing a platinum hit YouTube video where we about took the board out to the field and lit it up. We were real close. It was that type of day for both of us.
Man,
yeah,
that's funny.
So close. But
so what are we going to talk about tonight, guys?
So we're talking about death. We're going to talk about death. Just the end of life, mortality. It's going to be a really serious episode.
It's getting dark in here.
Absolutely.
Okay. Great transition, by the way.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about death. It comes for all of us. And I think have you planned for the end of your own life? It's time to think about your loved ones now. No, obviously we're going to talk about the Grand Alliance death, specifically the Legions of Nagash. Sorry, Flesh Eater Courts. I still don't care about you. No, you're probably off the table, man. I gotta limit this somehow.
Well, I mean, they don't fit with anything. Like, I hate to say it, but where, like, what?
What do you mean they don't fit?
Well, let's have a discussion about that during our segment. We've added another segment to our death segment. It's a sub-segment.
What about
Flesh Eater what?
Flesh Eater what?
Yeah. So, but of course, first, let's get into the news. Tommy, take it away.
So rumor engine? You got the rumor engine image for me?
Yeah, man. Oh, do I? I do. What we call this the least exciting.
Oh, hold on.
What?
The Mitzi and Jimbo show has showed up in the chat, and it must be like 3 a.m. for them.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm glad to see that they actually have a post that is the Mitzi and Jimbo show. This is the least exciting rumor engine ever. Let me lock on myself here. We will share up. Share. There you go. Can you see that?
Ken.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, would you like to see what it is?
Sure.
That.
Whoa.
because they had already revealed it in the video.
Wow.
Oh.
That could have been some foresight.
Because those are new Gothic cathedral for 40K, right?
With
Yeah,
a hatch on top.
Yep. This
That's
is it's cool stuff. Like this is the new terrain that's going to come with Kill Team, which I'm excited about. Like I love the look of this stuff. I think it looks super cool. And by the way, this is totally AOS ready, right? Like it's got this old stone building with skulls on the side and stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's a little light here or whatever, but that's an X-Acto knife away from gone, and then this building's perfect. Big cracked stone, eagle motifs, Gothic architecture. Yeah. Yeah. You had me. All right. So there you go. That is the elite. But you know what, Tom? Since that rumor engine was so disappointing, I have a special surprise for everybody.
Oh, do
you ready? I do.
He's
I'm going to lock
leak
on
something
myself and reshare.
Vince, this isn't those pics that you send me, is it?
Different ones. Okay. Don't worry. Yeah, those are just for you. Okay. So instead, we have this. So this is an updated what we haven't seen yet. Rumor engine. So the Deepkin revealed this. I know that's kind of faded. I'm sorry. That was the picture I got. They were a little too faded. But the helm, the hook scythe, and then like the scroll, right, which is the octopus with a knife. And then the eel head. Right now, there are others of these that could also end up being Deepkin, like this thing could be. It's possible. We just might not have seen it yet. And then some of this stuff is also like other releases. Like this was the Daughter's Medusa and stuff. So this was updated recently. This could also end up being like kelp or waves. This might be like some of the waves of one of the things just inverted. Right? So so certainly there's still a couple on the table that it could also take out. Interestingly, one of these first things painted, still nothing. I have to believe there's a missing Caradron Overlord kit that's never coming out.
Don't say that.
I'm just telling you, what else could this be at this point? This is a year plus old.
I don't know.
We came up on the year birthday of this thing this month.
I don't know. Just like that breaks my heart if it was indeed a KO kit that didn't see the light of day.
I'm just saying.
I mean, that would have had to happen like pre-books go to publishing. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, but those books are published or like printed, sent to printer way before that.
That's what I'm saying. So like, I don't know that it could be something that didn't end up in the KO book. I don't know.
Doesn't fit on the new Mechanicum stuff, does it?
I don't think so. Like, not with those lights.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know what to make of it. That's what I would say. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some Night Haunt stuff here. Seems to make some obvious connections, some death. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
Eldar.
I
Dark Eldar coming.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really interesting stuff still here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to guess Plastic Sisters anymore at every one of them because I know they're coming. But and they're probably not many, or any of these.
Not done being sculpted.
Yeah. The ones I'm actually super interested in. Oh, by the way, this is going to be. There's a strong rumor that there's that ghost unit is going to be. The ghost unit that's pictured with the Knight of Shrouds that he's leading.
Yes.
Yeah.
That they're going to get a box release. Like that's a strong rumor coming out. So this is likely. This looks much like the Knight of Shrouds, but isn't the Knight of Shrouds.
Right.
Chances are that's his thing.
The one you said could be kelp. I think that's probably Night Haunt.
Yeah, I think it's Night Haunt too.
Could be. Yeah. This could also be them. Yeah.
Green flames. Yep.
I mean, same with like this could be. We got the image that looked like the new black coach.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So who knows what we could see there? Like that could have a terrain piece too. This could be part of that. You never know. So
I'm gonna do a cold shot, by the way, on that death stuff.
Okay.
I am of the mindset at this point that I don't think that we're getting truly new units.
Okay. You think we're getting refreshes of a lot of old units?
Yeah, I do. The more that I think about it, the way that the wording was on the Legions of Nagash book of like it has to be within this book to be legal. Like it wasn't keyword based. It makes in the way they use the language of like reinforcements. These are reinforcements to Nagash is how Pete talked about it on Wednesday night. reinforcements are things that are already from your army, right? Like that's what your reinforcement pool is. And I just wonder if it was a play on words that like we'll get a refresh of the Black Coach, of bats, maybe. You know, we all want zombies, maybe zombies, who knows? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think that we're gonna get a refresh of all the like the bad sculpts. The old sculpt.
Yeah,
it'd be great. I hope that that's the case. I mean, I'm certainly not against that. Though I wouldn't be surprised if there was a new unit or two. Really, like
there might be, but then they're going to have some clause somewhere that says this may be included in the Legions of Nagash, even though if it blah 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 blah.
Sure,
and then it's not centralized anymore.
I agree, but or they could be new releases specifically for Nighthaunt.
Yeah,
which is famously absent and could get its own attention. Right. My point is that, like, I agree. If they refresh the units in that already exist in the Legions of Nagash, then yeah, great, thumbs up. You know, new kits, and they don't have to change anything. But Nighthaunt is a thing that exists and is famously, you know, not part of that necessarily, right?
And the thing is, Nighthaunt doesn't ally with anything in the book except Soulblight and Death Grand Alliance.
Yeah, so maybe it might be a Nighthaunt update.
Yeah, and I would be more inclined to say that they bring out like Super Coach and name it something different so that they have both. Just because it seems like they prefer to bring out something new and a new war scroll that dials it up. But I would love it if they refresh some of these plague zombies. That would be amazing. They would rule the market on zombies miniatures. Well,
it's dreaming the impossible dream, but
unlikely.
Someday. All right. So there you go. That's a nice little fun thing. I'm most excited to know what that weird shoulder pad thing is. Not the Stormcast shoulder pad, the other hooky thing.
Yep.
I want to know what that thing is. That's been around for a while. I'm very curious about it. All right. Other news.
Edeneth Deepkin, we have a ton of leaks. 3-week release. It looks like the 14th of April, so a couple weeks from now, 2 weeks from now, we have the pre-release with book cards, dice, and then like heroes, and then the rest of the units, I think is what they said. We have more images of war scrolls that dropped, including there's 2 Eidolons. So the Mathalon, which is like the underwater god, the god of sea elves or whatever, the deeps.
Hunter, isn't he Hunter Storms the Deep? Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And the war scrolls in French.
Ooh la la.
Yes, and then yeah. So Edeneth are coming. Yay!
Yeah. What was cool with the pictures, the new pictures that kind of got leaked out from the White Dwarf, is that model has an alternate head and some alternate sea life that comes with him. Mm-hmm. So it seems like that's probably not a named character.
Mm-hmm. Or a version of him could be, or something, but sure.
Yep. So, you know, a couple of different versions there, and it seemed like we saw the Seahorse guy there's an alt head as well. So
yeah, I saw that. He looked good too.
Mm-hmm.
That alternate one, he was sexy. That alternate sculpt looked darker, right? It was nice. Yeah, like there was some interesting things. Obviously, we saw that we're going to get the tide mechanic. We actually saw like what the tide mechanic looks like in the spoiler, although it's all in French, but I can kind of understand the things say Tempest and whatever, and you know,
stuff's happening.
That sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing was the 12 wound hero with no damage chart.
Yeah, usually doesn't that stop at like 10?
10, yeah. Yep.
Breaking all the rules.
Breaking all the rules. Get rid of them. Toss out the rules. They're gone. The rules, where we're going, we don't need rules.
These are coming with a new set of new 4 pages just for them.
Obviously, related to that, thank you, Stone Monk, is the talk of phase 2 of Warhammer. Some people have made a big deal out of this. Is that like, oh, this is 2nd edition? You know, I don't know that it is. we talked about this in the last couple of weeks when we've talked about malign importance, and we've talked about, like last month when we did our like theorizing on what malign importance are. Just even last week when we talked about the rebranding associated with that, we talked about like a lot of things have pointed to some type of revision or maybe update of the base rules, or like the way we described it was a soft update or soft like edition launch of the game. And I still feel that way. Like, I don't know that this is going to be like Age of Sigmar 2.0 or even like Warhammer Age of Nagash. Or like, I don't think it's going to be anything like that. I think this is going to just be, we have an updated logo, and I think with the new GHB, I'm guessing we'll get some updated, like, core rules / rules of one.
Well, I mean, you could see like they could take it and re-expand and sort of update the base 4-page rulebook into sort of a, into a sort of 6-page rulebook with what they've now considered to be other sacrosanct stuff built in, terms defined. Things like famously battalion is never mentioned. Rules like how to include that stuff could be there, like what a battalion is. It doesn't have to be like how to buy it with points, because that belongs in match play, not in the general rules. But it could still define battalion, right? Because you can take battalions in any type of play, obviously, right? In fact, there are many of them you can only use in open and narrative play. So kind of just explaining what they are might be a thing that's useful. There could be small changes like that, but I would agree with you. It would seem to me most of the rule changes you'd want to relegate to the match play section. Open and narrative don't need that stuff, right?
Nope.
But I think what was being pointed to there was that internally they see this as phase 2.
Right.
Like, people are thinking of that too limitedly.
Yeah.
Right? People heard that and thought, oh, they mean 2nd edition.
Mm-hmm.
No. Mm-mm. No, that would be dumb. Internally, there's a whiteboard that they had sketched out some time ago that said Age of Sigmar phase 1, and they talked about the past stuff, and then they said phase 2, and they're like, okay, we're going to use this narrative framing device, and it's going to be malign importance. We're going to update the logo. We're going to do, and then it filters down, right? We're going to zoom in on the world, make it darker, make it grittier, get to street level stuff, make people feel things. We'll use it to reintroduce some gods. We'll use it to make subtle rule shifts, right, that we want to push into the meta. Like, that's phase 2.
Yeah.
A phase isn't a single point in time. It's a phase. You do a lot of stuff in phases in project planning, right?
It's going to culminate in a bad Avengers movie.
Right, exactly.
I gotta say, I'm loving the introduction of kind of the demigod, right? Marathi being kind of a step below the gods. You got the Mortarks brings them into alignment with that. You got this Mathlon guy who's not as prominent or historic maybe as Marathi, but maybe he will become such, or maybe he's more like the Avatar of Cain in some aspects, right? But I like this kind of demigod level that we're spending time on, because it's hard to just go Nagash all the time, right? And waiting for Teclis to come out and waiting for these other guys, to have these big models. It's nice to appease that kind of with these. Again, if you using the Avengers terminology, right? Street level
sure
gods.
While we're waiting on Infinity War, we can watch a new season of Jessica Jones.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it. No, absolutely. That sounds good to me. Yeah, I mean, it's funny that they'd reference Mathlon. Like, I really wish they would leave those gods dead and develop new ones, because the old gods were basically worthless. And the Ranadandra said that they're going to cycle, but that's fine. I guess the old gods, the cycle, it is a circle. So the old gods became new heroes, and the old heroes became new gods. So that's a fair interpretation of that.
Well, and being useless before doesn't mean they have to be useless now.
Fair. Totally true. I have a distinct hatred of every god from the old world because they were universally stupid and worthless.
Yeah.
Well, I think the irony is that they're trying to integrate them now.
Sure. They're doing a better job now.
Yeah.
They're more interesting now than they ever were before.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you think about the end of 8th, prior to the end times, like you couldn't play heroes, right? It was just a faux pas. Like named characters and all this kind of stuff were just not in the game. It was all about just troops and units. But with AOS, they figured out how to make them a fun part of the game, and they don't break it. They just add a lot of flavor and, that kind of thing. So it's nice to have. I mean, like, we'll talk about it later, but I'm enjoying Prince Vordry.
Sure. Yeah. I'm all about that. More sweet dudes like that. Like, really, more named characters you want to put on the table, and then let's have some stories featuring these guys.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what I want to see. The new short story that came out, the one that was we kind of mentioned offhand, but what was it called? A Rescued Soul. That's what it was called.
Yeah.
Holy crap, that was good. Like, I don't know if everybody's read A Rescued Soul. I'll link it down below.
Do it.
It's so good. It's so good because it's a wonderful conversation between Marathi and Malarian, and their personalities are so fantastic. And like the way that they reference Teclis and Tyrion, and like the twins will do this, and they'll like there's this grudging respect for them clearly. Like, I love how none of the alliances are rock solid, and it introduces more questions than it answers. I also love the little passing reference. So, like, did you catch that as the soul is floating away, it talks about how it sees chains running back in the direction it came from? And it knows that it would rather die 1,000 deaths than look backwards to see what those chains are attached to. Those chains are attached to Slaanesh.
Right.
Right. I was like, what a wonderful way to reference that. Like that even this like barely conscious functional soul is like, yeah, don't look at that.
I ain't going back. I'm not doing it.
I'm not going back. You can't make me. All right. So yeah, I mean, that was a really good short story. All right. Is there anything else we want to talk about for the upcoming Deepkin releases?
No, I don't think so.
Obviously, we're not gonna I'm not gonna get into the news and cover. One of the things we don't do in this segment is like try to decode every spoiled war scroll, because you can go find them yourself. And I would rather actually do that as a news item and do that as a feature when we actually know everything about it, right? So
it's really hard to like weigh in on things when we don't have the whole picture.
Yeah, like weighing in on one scroll in the void, you just don't know enough about it. Right. You don't know what points it costs, you don't know what else is in the army, you don't know what it synergizes with, you don't know what its bigger rules are. It's pointless to like, you can look at a thing and go, oh, that's neat. Right. And that's all you can say. Right. So all right. So obviously the book releases on the 21st.
Yep.
So we will be doing a breakdown show the next week, obviously. So
yep.
As always. Okay. So Tom, any other news items that we want to talk about?
We have some events coming up.
Yes, we do.
The Brawl 2K event in Buffalo, New York, 5 games, GHB 2017. We'll have the link in the description below. I believe that's early June.
Yep, early June. Yep.
We also have NashCon swiftly approaching. There's Warhammer. NashCon is in June as well. We have Warhammer Fest in May. We have, that's in England. What else?
Obviously NashCon.
NashCon, South Coast GD is the same weekend as Warhammer Fest. Yeah, lots of stuff coming up.
Links for both NashCon registration, which is open, and the Brawl will be down in the description. So, yes, I hope to see everybody at NashCon. I already did commit to David Griffin that I would paint up a model as a prize for him for something. I don't know what I'm painting this for. He didn't tell me what category, but I'll do the model for him. So there you go.
There you go.
I thought I might be able to make my NashCon, and then looks like my wife's vacation got moved, and so now it looks like I'm not going to do NashCon. I don't know. It's all up in the air. But there's a chance that I might do Nova. Who knows? We'll see.
Who knows what's happening, but I know I'll be there. I told David straight up, like, whatever with Tom, man. I'm going to be there. It was too much of a great time last year.
Yeah.
I hope Tom can make it. I love rolling to those things with Tom, but I'm going either way. And you should too, because it's super fun. You should come down, Eric. It's only a short, probably like 9-hour drive for you.
Well, I was just talking to talking NashCon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jacob Berry was inviting me on Twitter today.
Wow.
I played 2 Nashville guys in addition to meeting David Griffin, and they're just a fantastic group of people down there. That club is.
I love the South. Like, I love the South guys. Like those guys and like Tyler Emerson, and there's a whole bunch of them that are all kind of in that region.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, I think that's my region. If we were to divide up my master.
Sure. Yeah. So I just looked real quick. For a breezy 9-hour, 12-minute drive, you can get there, Eric. So there you go.
All
That's basically nothing.
Turn and burn.
There you go. All right. So, shall we turn, gentlemen, to our pick of the week and share our pick of the week with everybody?
Yeah.
So, Eric, what would you like to share with the audience?
All right. I shared the same thing last time, but for slightly different, same reason, but same verse or second verse, just like the first. And that is Coalescence. So there's a second Coalescence event, and all the information for that is chilling on wearetheneon.com. And so I haven't talked about it much, but we started planning for the June event back in November. And then this idea of creating one for Malign Portents kind of popped up in between there. So we kind of detoured a little bit to have something, and that went off really well. So thanks to everybody who participated in that and reported and such. But we have an event that June 23rd. This is a continuation of last year's inaugural event. Aristrat was freed by Archaon and the powers of chaos, and over the past, some time has passed, and the Aristrat and Archaon have destroyed a lot of things and caused a lot of destruction. And so now the forces of chaos and order and destruction and death will be gathering either to banish Aristrat or to empower him. There's going to be a lot of good information. The pack is going to be out by the end of April, so just about a month away. And they've learned, this crew, it's a new crew, but they've learned a lot from the last two events. And we're really excited to kind of have some stuff out. And I'm going to give a quick shout out. Bill Costello is working on this from the Rolling Bad crew. Alexander Nygaard, you know him from Fjordhammer. Ryan Orban is kind of new to this scene, but he's been working with the Nova, and he's doing Nova Narrative. Jake Castro and Alex Polimeni are involved, if you know them from Twitter and probably from Facebook, and a bunch of other Neos have contributed, but it's a kind of a fresh new group, and all the fun stuff that's going to be taking place June 23rd for narrative is going to be rolling out on wearetheneon.com. So that's my recommendation. That's my pick of the week, the month, and the year.
The week, the month, the year, all days in between, all nights, weekends, and major government holidays. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That will be linked down below. Tommy, what's your pick, brother?
I have no problem spruiking our channel. And indeed, Vince and I did all of us, the two of us and Stone Monk and many, many other people, all did Adepticon this last weekend. Vince and I did a Adepticon coverage. We're not going to go into in-depth coverage of our matches or Crystal Brush or any of that here. But I would encourage you all to go check out the video and have our updates as to how things went last weekend. So,
yeah, if you want to see basically the detail of Adepticon, check that out. You can watch the sunset slowly in the background behind us across a beautiful Illinois sky as we make our way Indiana, I guess. I think we actually probably started recording in Indiana.
On us as it set on our screen.
Absolutely. And so my pick will be for two new friends who I met for the first time in person at Adepticon. And my pick of the week, as I mentioned in that show, is for Mitzi and Jimbo. Mitzi and Jimbo they have a little YouTube channel. I was subscriber number 17. They did a nice little wrap up every day. And I really like it. They already have a better intro than us, Tom, by the way. Like on the rip.
I'm Jimbo. Yeah, that's not us.
No, they've got like a great intro with like graphics and stuff.
Oh.
So no, they're acing already.
But are we talking about that tonight?
I'm talking about that you should go sub to that.
Right.
That's
Right.
my pick of the week.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about some graphics tonight. Yes, we are.
Okay. I didn't know where we're fitting that in because technically that's kind of news, but
We'll talk about it after this because it's gonna come up in some hobby time is where it's gonna come up. But but anyways, Mitzi and Jimbo, thank you. You derailed my train of thought. They have some great coverage from every day. Super fun dudes, awesome shows. And I figure if we all go there and sub to them now, we will force them to make content because they will be guilted into continuing to produce content for us. That's what I do with Stone Monk. I guilt him all the time when there's like any kind of lapse in Mortal Realms content. I just guilt him real hard and then new stuff comes out.
Vince literally stopped guilting me.
I've literally done more Warhammer Weekly than my own content in the last 2 months.
But Mitzi and Jimbo, their channel will be linked down below. Two great gentlemen, and Mitzi won best sports overall in the
Grand
GT. Yeah. So, which is pretty impressive, really. Like that is not an easy thing to clear. So, congratulations, sir.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's turn to some hobby time. Let's bring it down. Talk about hobby time. What are we working on? Post Adepticon. We come back. Now, I had to travel. I just got back last night, so I haven't had much time. Like I literally got back from Adepticon and then got on a plane 6 hours later.
Yikes!
But for everybody else, I assume you might have had some hobby. There can be a lull, or it can reinvigorate you. So, Mr. Stone Monk, what have you been working on since you got back? What's on your hobby table?
What I'm going to be working on next is terrain. I mean, I think, we went tons of terrain on the tables at Adepticon. You see such cool stuff. You play on such great tables. I've got a ton sitting here that belongs to my buddy Aaron from the Mortal Realms podcast. And I've got, the old, fort or whatever, watchtower and chapel and a couple of walls. And then I've got a bunch of Hellfort stuff. That stuff is getting painted this month. It's going to happen. I'm going to get it done because he just got his space remodeled. So I was holding on to it for him. It's going back painted. It's getting on some tables. We're going to roll some dice, all that good stuff.
Did you know the Hellfort stuff has been discontinued?
Really?
I was on somebody made a comment about it. I was like, I went on the site and the only things they have is the Crucible and one of the wall sections. Everything else is gone at this point.
Interesting.
Everything else is gone. And so I immediately went to my distributors and I was like, give me all that you can.
Do you think the new Azerite stuff is kind of taking place?
Maybe. We'll see. I'm anxious about it. I'm hopeful. But what I'll say is this: I have a project as well that that's been a passion project that I've been kind of tinkering around over the last year. My Hellfort board, and in light of this, the absence of the Dreadhold, it feels like now is a good time. I'm at a hobby lull myself. I'm just I'm at a spot where I'm trying to paint some miniatures. I have some Stormcast that I'm working on, and
that's what we call them: Space Stormcast, Space Cast.
Yeah. See, and here's the new lightning strike.
Yeah, that's what that is.
Yeah. So I'm working on some of those. New Retributor. See, new Retributor. So working on a little bit of Stormcast, and I just can't bring myself to do any detailing or actually any worthwhile work. These are quick paints, but I realize I don't even have it in me to do a lot of detail work. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these guys done, and then I'm going to do my board. I'm going to focus on that, and spend probably a month or so on that, and just kind of pound it out. Well, a lot like yourself. It's something that I can use every time I play.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, man. It's good to alternate your hobby projects. You know what I mean? I alternate between army stuff and competition stuff generally. You can't do one thing all the time or you burn out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I just think it's relevant to change stuff up, develop different techniques. You use different sort of painting muscles
Yep.
right? When you're working on terrain or speed paint stuff, rather than when you're working on like a really go for the gold army project. So yeah, nothing wrong with that. It's good. It's all a hobby, dude. You know what I mean? Like none of it's bad. And besides, you could do with some painted terrain. You got like a freaking, you got a mountain of unpainted terrain. You could do to get some of that painted. Like
Well,
no joke.
I think that's where we're headed.
All right, cool. For me myself, I spent a little bit of time this evening working on my last Hag Queen that I need for my daughters. Obviously this one has her little helmet. I gave her the little sister's helmet. She's the only one in my army without. See, she's got her little helmet on. Her demon face. She's the only one that doesn't have the hair. Like I wanted to do a few weird standouts without the hair. Most other people have the hair. So that way I could tell my hag queens apart if I give them different items or whatever, you know, little tiny stuff. But once that's done, I'll be at an even 1250 on points. I feel good about that. That's a good start. So then I'm going to take a break and I'm going to prep up another competition piece for Golden Demon because I'm going over to Warhammer Fest in May. I'm excited. Coming to compete.
Nice. You're going to do that unit we talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say what it is. It's no great secret, but yeah, I'm gonna do the orcs from Shadespire.
That's not the unit I'm talking about.
Oh no, I can't do that. I double checked that unit.
Oh no!
Yeah, they have rules against that, but that's a shame. I thought about it, but it would have been great. But yeah, so I'm gonna do the orcs for a Shadespire unit, which I think will be fun. That goes in the AOS like squad unit category. But I've got a lot of stuff. I just need to figure out how the heck I'm going to get over to the UK. That's my biggest challenge at this point. But
getting all your models over in one piece.
Yeah, because they're big and they're like I'm bringing like 3 massive fiddly models, so that's gonna be fun. But hey, there you go. We'll go from there. Other hobby time though. I think it's important that we share this because Eric, there's other stuff you were working on.
What?
So Eric, I'm ready. Are we ready to share?
Are we going to talk about a project?
Well, I'm asking him first if we're ready to share. Before
I think we're ready to share. Do you have all the files ready to share?
I do. Okay, I do. But if you want to share them, they're your creation.
You go ahead.
ABC, BVD. You know, that's all I'm saying. So, that's correct. So go ahead, Eric.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, so we all enjoy Warhammer Weekly, and we have for such a long time. Vince and Tom bring their expertise, they bring laughs, they pick on each other at the expense of each other for our benefit. You know, Vince and Tom said, you know what? We might be hacks, but we're tired of looking like hacks.
That's basically, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, that's dead on.
So they're big fans of the Age of Mirth stuff that I've been working on, and some of the drawings that I did for the Renown and Ruin, and so they asked me if I would draw a couple of things, work on a little bit of a logo for them, and so we went through a process to find something that you guys would like, and we created a couple of caricatures, some personas to fit the two of you. You guys, I think, put a poll out.
You
did. To see what duo would best fit the two of you.
Do anybody in the comments, do you remember what duo won? Do we have anybody that's watching live that remembers which 2 won?
We'll give them a second.
Yep.
Looks like they're talking about something else entirely. Like we haven't kept their attention.
They're talking about Vince and I staying with Remington.
Oh. No, that's fine. Well, my wife's going to be with me, Rem, so I doubt she's going to want to crash. But if it was just me, I'd be all down. The Chateau de Remington was a wonderfully warm and inviting place, no doubt about it. But
I remember what Thanquil and Bone Ripper was an option, but they are not the ones that won.
But that's okay. All right.
Anybody else? Nope.
All right, time's up. We got to go.
Okay, let's do it.
The winners were a teeny tiny Lord of Change for Vince and a teeny tiny Nurgling for Tom.
Oh, I'm so happy that won. Ah, that's great. Okay. So Thankful and Bone Ripper were very close. Like, and though I
I'm
would
so
love to
glad that one
imagine,
did not
Tom,
win.
I would have loved to have you be a big dumb rat ogre I was riding around on. Like that would have been pretty great. But
I would have enjoyed drawing that.
yes, indeed. All right, so let's let me share up here and we'll do some live reveal of new logo stuff. This is going to be replacing some thumbnail sketches and stuff like that. All right. So first off, we have a new little. Is that coming through? Okay, am I locked on me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
Yeah, I'm locked on me. Okay. So first off, a nice little simple. This is a nice square. Now there's more to it, but this is sort of the base logo. So obviously the if it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer. I love it. Nice, effective, simple logo. We can lay under some stuff. But of course, this isn't what the people want to see, is it now? No. We know what the people want to see. But now! Oh, it's Tom. There's Tom. So he's a little nurgling.
Yep.
And there's a fun little Easter egg in here that I think is so very clever that I like, and I love it when like Tom, you had to point it out to me because I didn't catch it initially.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this captures the quintessence of Tom, certainly.
On a lot of different levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I thought Tom was a fantastic sport to let this be his representation. I've been around Tom. He doesn't drool. There's no slop coming off of him. No stench. But to let this be his persona for all of your amusement, I thought was a very brave and bold step.
Thank you.
Tom, always a good sport. And then
and to be Tom, the what he's got in his hand, he's got a list that he's writing to play some Warhammer. So that's him working on his 2,000 point lists.
Yes, the MM. I didn't catch the MM originally, and then of course 2,000.
MM is Roman numeral for 2,000, folks.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Nurgles and demons write in Roman numerals, so
yeah, clearly. And he's kind of looking a little bit trollish. Just
a little bit. All right. So, and then myself. But now, there we go. Which I'm not even joking. This is maybe my favorite thing in the entire universe. Like, this is amazing. Little bold Lord of Change me with the paintbrush staff is like maybe my favorite thing ever in my whole life up to this point. I've reached a new zenith. I didn't think it could be done, but here we are.
Yes, here we are. This has happened, and it looks pretty accurate. And the best part about all of this, by the way...
Oh, I'm also wearing an apron, by the way. So.
Yeah. The best part about all of this, by the way, is that Vince's wife hates birds.
She does, yes.
Just with the passion of 1,000 hells.
So that's pretty great. And then let's see. So then we've got our new, there you go. So that's the new actual splash screen for the show.
There you go,
show thumbnail with both of us together.
So we'll have some variations on these and make some different stuff for whatever you guys are looking for. What if you need to use make a graphic for advertising or just throwing up a new segment or whatever you want to do. These graphics are going to help you out.
We're so excited.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't be more thrilled. And like, it's awesome work. Eric, you came through 100%. Like I was absolutely overjoyed working on this with you. When I saw it, when I saw the initial stuff, I was like, I love this. I love everything about it. What you're doing. You're doing God's work. How much do I love it? Enough that I put it on a little business card, but now
I didn't. Did you have some of those over the weekend? Or you forgot them, right? They came right as you left. That's right.
I didn't forget them. These showed up at the house 2 hours after I left for Adepticon. So I had these made for Adepticon. They were a day late delayed, and they showed up 2 hours after I left.
So amazing.
Mhm.
It is so amazing. Yes, and for those that are asking, just merchandise is coming.
Sure. I want to like what we're looking to do is obviously some. I want to do like I'm not interested in just doing a bunch of dumb merch to do merch. Like that's stupid.
Right.
Like I'm not like, oh great, what's some more clever ways we can bilk money off of people? That's not what I'm
Yeah.
interested in.
Oh no,
Um,
not that.
no.
Yes, not that.
Right, not that. That's not what we're doing.
If we wanted to do that, we just make a Patreon.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like there'd be plenty of ways to go about that.
Sell a calendar.
Right. Right. Exactly. Who would do something crazy like that? No. No. So I want to do stuff that's fun that people can actually like use, that has real use, and try to do it for people that want to support the show and have a fun thing. So I'm looking to do aprons like this with various stuff on them. So I'm talking to the people who made my aprons to see what we can do. So there you go.
No, I agree with that. I like it. Merch.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it probably won't be t-shirts. I'm going to tell you right now. I don't know that I will ever do something like t-shirts. So there you go. Although I'm sure if you bug enough, like if you really want those logos or something on a shirt, I'll see what I can do. If enough people ask me or bug me about it, I'll see what I can do. Like, what's the absolute rock bottom cheapest place I can make them?
I want
because that would be my concern.
Yeah, we want shirts to make us feel as uncomfortable as the show does.
Absolutely. Just get them like, oh my god, like
Let me be clear.
Itchy, and they shrink in the weirdest spots. So like
Yeah.
your armpits feel uncomfortable, but your belly feels completely aired out.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't
just-
mean like that. I don't mean I want them to be poor quality. I mean, I don't want to. I want to make sure that I'm not. Again,
I'm
it's
just
not
kidding.
it's a weird thing. I'm not trying
Okay.
to like make money off the enterprise. It's not why I do any of this. So whatever. No, it would be if it was, I'd be the worst businessman in history. So there you go. Oh, all right. Well, I'll reach out to you, Crazy Horse, because that's I did not realize that, but that could be very useful. All right. So thank you again to Eric, and you'll see that I'll use that the first time tonight. When you look at the thumbnail for this, it will be that. So let's talk about death, gentlemen. Shall we?
Hits here.
The thing you were talking about, like ordering coffins and preparing your loved ones, or the
Exactly. Yes, that thing. Correct. The basic rules. Despite years of research, death is still the #1 killer in America today. When are we going to end it? So,
we are one in Nagash, and Nagash is one in us.
That's right. That he ends the problem. Problem solved. So, yeah, we want to talk about now that the Legions of Nagash have been out for a little while. Obviously, we did our initial take on initial review after the book came out. But I think it's worthwhile, especially after a couple tournaments, to go back and take a look at this stuff and think about how it's performing. So before we start, I honestly wasn't going to talk about Flesh Eater Courts at all. And that tells volumes in and of itself. Okay. But instead, let's talk about why we're not going to talk about Flesh Eater Courts. Like, what's the problem with Flesh Eater Courts? Go, Tom. You had something prepared on this, so go ahead.
I mean, like, the problem is that like anything you want to do with Flesh Eater Courts, like, how do I want to say this? Either you're going to opt out of all the good stuff in death by going Flesh Eater Courts, allegiance, or you're going to go to Legions of Nagash, and then at that point, like, you can get added to like one of the legions, right? It's not all of them. Like, one of them has Flesh Eater Courts in it. Is that correct?
Everybody except Soulblight.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So two of the two.
Any of your like the Grand Host of the Legions could contain,
Yep.
those units,
Mhm.
right? Nothing is going to prevent. I mean, obviously, Soulblight doesn't have it in there, but like any of the legions can have any of the stuff that's available in the book in there, right?
But what they're doing, other things are in general doing better, is what I would say. And any of the battalions of the legions are, in my opinion, the battalions of the legions themselves, like we can go check, none of them include Flesh Eater units. So it's increasing your drops. Those things end up being self-contained, sectioned off. Like there's nothing to me that really jumps out.
The
Correct.
only thing
yeah,
on
like
that,
all the hardcore Flesh Eater Court stuff isn't present in the Legions of Nagash, right? Like it's those aren't things that are here. Like when you look at your battle line in the Legions of Nagash, which is everything is in this book, there's no ghouls. That's not there, right?
and that said, I mean, the Legion of Nagash book is sorely lacking, I think, battle or battalions that help it, because like you've got a couple that work well that you'll probably see in Sacrament and in the cohort of Host and Nagash. I mean, if you were to ally Flesh Eater Courts, they have seem like they have a plethora of battalions that you could fit little little groups of them in, but I haven't gone through Flesh Eater Courts that much to know what the best ones are. So
yeah, I mean, when you look at like the battalions that were in Flesh Eater Courts,
Right.
they reflect an old school battalion design that's clearly not what you're seeing in the new battalions, right? When I think we have enough of them now to draw a pattern between the Nurgle book, the Death book, and the Daughters of Cain. What we're seeing is battalions becoming a much more sort of defined thing, in that they're a small grouping of minis based on a theme. They're not about pile everything in. They're largely
they're moving away from a one-drop mentality.
Right. And they're more about a battalion is a group of general items on a theme, and they add a sort of straight one or two very sort of normal abilities. Now, there's a couple exceptions, right? There are some things in the Legions of Nagash that do act in different ways, but the majority of the battalions are more just if you like snakes, here's the snake battalion, right? If you like witch elves or whatever, here's the witch and cauldrons, here's that battalion, or whatever the case, right? I'm oversimplifying to a degree, whereas the Flesh Eater Courts battalions are kind of more crazy and all over the board.
Well, they're older. They follow the older model.
Yes, it's not like a huge about face. I would call it a pivot in the design, right?
Yep.
I think too. I mean, the number one thing that I think makes the Flesh Eater Courts not work in the new book is summonable. The new book really pushes you towards using a good amount of summonable units. There's so many new rules that that you don't get to play with if you don't use summonable units in any major way.
Sure.
Different summoning system, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the hard part when I was doing some list building for Acon. I tried to run my Soulblight list that I ran at Havoc, and then just use the new battle line and use some of those new things. But if you try and skimp out and minimize your battle line, you're just not using half the rules in the book, and you're not getting the advantages of those gravesites healing things. Yep. So the new book really pushes you towards skeletons.
Being insular within the new book.
Yeah.
What are you really gaining out of taking an FEC ally?
Yeah.
Right. It's hard to actually see it, because I agree. It's funny because the new summonable mechanic and the refill mechanic out of gravesites and out of the heroes is not that dissimilar to how the Flesh Eater Courts refill their units. Right. It's just arguably a little more versatile, because in the Flesh Eater Courts, you have a very tight alliance, right? This hero summons this stuff and summons to refill this unit, right?
Yep.
Now there's a little bit of variance, the big guy what is the
Vargulf?
Yeah, the Vargulf or whatever can do the big unit, the Crypt Horrors or Crypt Ghouls or whatever, I think, or he can do 2 different levels of them, however it goes. But for the most part, it's a pretty 1-to-1-ish relationship, right? Whereas the Legions of Nagash refilling, similar mechanic, probably often yields similar numbers.
Yep.
I would bet.
Yep.
For a lot of your stock heroes, where instead of rolling 6 dice and you refill onto this plus, you get just straight 2D or a D3 per unit or something. The difference is I can just push that around wherever I want, right? If I want to hit my Hex Wraiths or my Dire Wolves or my Skeletons or whatever, I can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's also much more flexible in the fact that although the heroes have to be quite close, the grave sites can be, placed wherever you want. And hence you can sort of pick your fight where you want, right? So yeah, I mean, to me, they aren't doing anything unique anymore. And they don't have any great advantages. Like, they're missing too many of the components of sort of a highly competitive thing.
Yeah.
Like, they aren't incredibly fast. They hit okay hard. They don't have a ton of rend. They don't have much in the way of mortal wounds. They have some alternate deployment through battalions, but not a great amount. Like, they don't have a lot of like flight and stuff like that. There's just, they don't have a good bag of tricks to fall back on. They're not super tough. They can refill, but they're not ultra durable.
Right.
So it's hard to say that they have a distinct identity anymore. I think at the same time, they also suffer from a bit of sameness. And what I mean by that is, like, they all kind of look very similar, right?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of their heroes are just literally a model out of the same kit.
Yeah.
Right. So the whole army has a very samey feel. Yep. Whereas like a real death force, say what you will, the Legion of Gosh is a big tent party. Like, it does have a lot of quite different looking stuff going on, right? Yep. Like, if you want to, you can have a really varied, interesting force on the table. You can have ghosts and the Mortarks and the Morghasts and vampire people running around and hordes of skeletons and zombies and all sorts of wackadoo stuff going on. So, bats. Who doesn't like bats? I like bats. Bats are fun.
Bats are fun. Need new models too.
You can even have like the worst model in the world in your army if you want to put the black coach in your army. So you got that going for you. That's nice. Hopefully we get a refill on that one, or a refresh on that one soon. All right. So that's, I think, Flesh Eater Courts.
Yep.
So now what I want to pivot to is Mr. Stonemonk, why you just happened to take death at Adepticon, didn't you?
I did. I was one of 15 people to take death out of for the championship.
Out of 164.
Out of 164. So just shy of 10%, right?
That is shocking that it's that low, to be honest. Like, I really thought I would see more death players. I really did.
Sean Clark, also one of the people who took it, is in the chat.
Yeah, nice. He was the second. We're correct.
Yeah, Brendan Melnick took the highest death player at rank 10, and then Sean came in next.
Guess who was third?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, this guy.
Nice. All right. So, shout out, because Brendan not only took best death in the GT, didn't he take best death in teams and the Vanguard as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I got to. So he's from the Milwaukee crew, the guys from Milwaukee. So representing some Wisconsin, and I got to talk to him. Met him early on. I think on Friday while he was playing doubles, and got to kind of talk to him about his list a little bit. And he brought Nagash, hosted Nagash, and pretty. I mean, even at the 2,000 points, it was pretty much Nagash. I don't think he had any Morghasts when I was looking on Twitter on what his list was.
Didn't he take a 30 block of Graveguard and 2,000 skeletons?
Yeah, like some tens of skeletons, and then a block of 10 Black Knights, which he says were the star of his list.
Yeah, somebody got hit with those turn 1 in the team's event, and it took out like. I knew who it was. Sean Troy, who won. His Bastillodon in the 1,000-point Vanguard got turn 1 by the 10 block of Black Knights. Because they just came in with a bunch of 2 damage attacks, charged the whole charged across. Right.
Well,
and he rolled
assassinated a Bastillodon at the top of 1.
Well, and this is what he said. His strategy for this was that he would buff them up, he would run them in.
Yep.
They would shock his opponent, and then they'd put a bunch of resources towards them. And so then that just kind of became a distraction for his opponents. So
excellent. Sean, by the way, shout out to to Sean Clark, who's, as you said, is in the chat. He did get the PM Vanguard best death. So we want to make sure we give credit where credit's due. And also, Sean was nice enough to give us Brendan's list, which was Nagash, Necromancer, two 40 blocks of Skellies, a 30 of Graveguard, and then a 10 of Skellies.
That's
so
what I thought. Yeah.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, I thought it was like about 110, 120 plus Nagash and a Necro. Yep.
Yeah, so a lot of bodies, a lot of summonable bodies, right? And Nagash to go hog wild on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you ran Legion of Night, correct?
Yeah. So I playing Soulblight previously, and Soulblight taking a bit of a hit in the new book with Vargeist no longer being battle line. I wasn't running Blood Knights in my 1,000 point list, but I definitely wanted to run them in this list because I had, some models I was proud of table, putting on the table.
Yeah.
Legion of Blood was my first pick because Blood, Vampire Lords and Blood Knights get +1 to their attacks, but in the scheme of things, that didn't seem to add that much overall. And so again, and I was kind of, because I was trying to fit all of these kind of vampire units in, and I was trying to fit Neferata in because another model that I have that I really enjoy, but it just wasn't getting enough use out of my out of the battle line.
Yep.
And what I found over the course of the game, and I think as the other players did, is the battle line are what make sure that everything that can do damage has the room to do damage, and doesn't get taken off by somebody charging you.
Sure.
So
let me ask you this question about your stuff.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one MVP and one ultimate letdown from your list, what would be your choices?
So MVP was definitely Prince Vordre.
Okay.
Playing him in Legion of Night. And the reason I took Legion of Night is because, so I've played, so one with the other thing that's nice about the grave sites is that you can null deploy your summonable units, right?
Sure.
You can
Sure.
keep them off the table.
Yep.
I was playing a 10 drop list and I needed time to think. And so I would try and deploy grave sites first. And so that I would, and trying to deploy fast so that, my opponent didn't have as much time to think. And then Legion of Night gives you ambush, which is another null deploy, and
Right.
and gets people thinking and worrying. And Prince Vordre, if you put him in ambush, scares people. They worry about where he's coming on, how he's coming on, and that sort of thing. And so, but he was definitely the MVP. I mean, he can go in and take heroes. He can go in and take units apart. He's got the tools to do all that stuff, and he's got the only shooting, the best shooting, I suppose, in death. He's got an 8-inch, basically Thunder Tusk. 2 up,
Sure.
2 up, 3 up, or it's usually a 3 up. It can go down to 2 up, 6 mortal wounds, and that's how I handle Balewind Vortexes. So. So
in a good way.
Yeah. So I mean, he was MVP. Let down. Probably, I only had the points for a unit of 3 Vargeists.
And to be real clear, by the way, you weren't using him as your general, correct?
Correct. I was using a White King,
Right.
which on in my territory was a 2 up. And I gave him swift form, so he's running 14 inches, so I can get him to whatever grave sites I needed him to be at, or go and support a unit in combat if I absolutely needed to.
Really good idea.
So he was just a good utility, and there's a number of times where he just needed, and in terrain he's on a 1 up in my territory, and he's on a horse, so easy to do. And so
let's drill in on a couple of these for a moment, because I want to blow out some of these units that I think you're naming and really talk about them, because I think they are like actual rock stars. So Vordry is interesting. You mentioned a shooting attack. I agree with you. He has actually it's not listed on the profile, so it's easy to miss it, right? Because it's just kind of buried down in his special rules. But when he's relatively unwounded, that's a heck of a
spit.
Yeah. And it's an ability. It's not a missile attack. So he can run and still use this ability in the shooting phase.
Right.
And so it's not affected by negative shooting or anything like that. He doesn't have a lot of the other zombie dragon can often auto hit versus hordes, but still has to roll the wound. And then he has a spell that's quick blood that gives him +1 to hit and wound. So he's usually 2-ups and 3-ups on most of his stuff. Now I still managed to roll ones quite a bit on those, but it just means that he's got a 2 damage. I think 2 of his attacks are 2 damage and 1 is D6. So and plenty of rend to throw around.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, and he's a flying unit. He's a big monster. He heals. He's got a chalice. He heals 1 wound each combat that he kills something. In most of my games, all but 1, I think he died in, or he was alive in all of them but 1. And usually he was on full health by the end of the game. So an ironclad took him out in 1 round, which was unfortunate. But we can talk about that.
Sure.
Was it a clown car?
It was a clown car, but ambushing befuddled his that clown car coming down, where he wasn't aggressive enough because he was worried about my ambushing. And so I was able to kind of keep him in his backfield.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, he's pretty this he's got a heck of a range, right? Like, as all of his attacks are 2 and 3 inches. He's got 7 -2 rend attacks. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
His main attack is 3 damage on the charge. His other attack is D6 damage. Both of those are rocking on a -2 rend. Like, he can get in there and do work. Like, no doubt about it. I think the only way to use him, I think you're exactly correct. The way to use him is not as the general, right? Because then you lose.
He's a
stuff.
you
just don't need him as the general, right? Yeah, he's a big giant hammer. Pretty durable hammer at that.
Yeah, I literally crossed out his command ability because I didn't care.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's kind of a command ability anyways, but whatever.
So yeah, I mean, he was the goal was just to make sure that he didn't die, whether that's putting him in an ambush so he couldn't get shot off turn 1, or if it was against a combat army, putting a lot of bodies in between him and whatever else. So
the other one I wanted to drill in on is what you mentioned, because there's 2 White Kings.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And you were running the White King with sword and board, right?
The Veilful sword.
Yes.
In the shield.
Yes. I'm gonna call him sword and board White
sword
King.
and board. Yep.
Yeah.
There's the old Krell model with the 2-handed axe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I find interesting about that guy in the Legion of Night is sort of exactly what you said. Like, you charted it out perfectly, right? Which is the fact that in setup, you will, in the Legion of Night, you'll often be able to have this guy on a standing 1-up, right? With no Mystic Shield or anything like that.
Yep.
Just in your territory, all your death rattle stuff is +1 to save.
+1.
And at the same time, he's just, as you mentioned, a guy on a horse, right?
Yeah.
So he's not a monster. So you can just, if there's any terrain you can place this dude on in your entire, zone, boom, 1-up just like that. Like, that's very strong for a hero. And one of the things you mentioned was your higher number of drops.
Yeah.
And so, people's big fear with a lot of times when you talk about the 5 wound thing like this, we banged on about this a little bit in the post show, but people's fear with 5 wound heroes is, they're just going to get sniped or something, right? First of all, I find that claim dubious in general, because a lot of armies don't have the reach to go get your 5 wound hero if he's buried in the back of the table somewhere.
Yeah, certainly not first turn. You got to do some work to get there.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to say that there aren't KO things, but being on a standing 1-up is pretty good, because it's pretty hard to get like massive mortal wound stuff into a dude behind your line in round 1 in most armies.
Even against KO, if you deploy strategically,
right,
you can make him the worst decision they can make.
Right. Absolutely.
And so, like, an example, this is my second game was versus a very standard Zilfin clown card. It's actually the exact list that I was thinking about taking.
Okay.
My general was a 4-up armor save rune priest with 5 wounds on foot, to be very clear. And I put him, it was on 3 plays of power. and I put him on the back, like if this screen were the field, the deployment, I put him right here.
You need to use the other side because that's covered up by our little pictures. Use the other side of the screen.
I put him right here, right there, in the exact corner, touching both board edges. And then all my other heroes were halfway down the board to all the way down on the other side. And so the KO player had to make a very distinct decision at the beginning of the game. Do I go for the general who's granting the entire army, because I strung all my units out, like my heavy troop units from him 6 inches out, all the way the whole length of the board, zoning them out. So they could either kill him or actually all the rest of my heroes. They had to choose. Because he was making them battle shock immune, they went for him, obviously. And I table him in turn 3. And by the way, that Rune Priest on a 4-up save survived into turn 2.
Yeah.
To the bottom of turn 2.
Right.
He had to send riggers into behind my lines on a charged pylon to finally kill that Rune Priest.
Yeah, I got a nice rigger charge against my my White King, and he shrugged off all but 2 wounds and then just ran away 14 inches. Plus he gets 4 inches to his run. He's like, yeah, you can't catch me though. But,
actually they can.
Well, okay.
To a 12-inch fly.
Well, but then I had 40 skeletons just piling around them, and
they can't catch it. Yeah, they're
when they're dead, they can't catch it.
Yeah, they're dead.
But and that's but yeah, I mean, it was great to have him to be, because I had a couple others. I had a necromancer that needed to survive, and so he just needed to hide as good as he could. And most people didn't bother the necromancer; like, he just wasn't that pivotal. He was a mystic shield buff. He would he was there to do death invocation, heal units, that sort of stuff.
Well, I also find that like his ability to his sort of super ward save to pass off wounds, right? His damage prevention save often just makes people it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to put that much heat into that stupid guy. Like, some people will, but on the whole, it's just so annoying to try to kill.
But and then once in a while, Van Hells, you get a double pile in. But and then I had a Vampire Lord, which Vampire Lord, what do you do with him? He got, so in the new book, he got his War Scroll spell taken away. So he's like one of the only wizards that doesn't have a spell on his War Scroll. But he has he can take so a lot of times what I'd try and do with him was do just what we talked about, is ambush him in the backfield, because he's on a small base, and he can get back there with some Vargeist to protect him from the charge, and it's themely. And I'd try and use a spell to I think I was trying to do the Spirit Gale, which potential of 3 mortal wounds, and then -1 to hit, -1 to wound. So just trying to get him somewhere to either do that or Arcane Bolt the hero or something like that. But he wasn't very successful. he's like a 4-up, no real way, unless he Mystic Shields himself or gets in terrain or whatever. But there's not often a lot of terrain by the board edge.
Yeah, he's probably some fat that you could have trimmed.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. If there's anything good about the Vampire Lord, it is that he has an unusual amount of power per square inch.
Sure.
What I mean by that is he's a pretty powerful, pretty mobile thing on a tiny base, right? Like, he's on a 32 inch, good Lord. He's on a 32 mil round, right? And he hits hard enough and is a spellcaster and can refresh units and all that stuff on a pretty tiny base, who's also pretty mobile and can fly.
Yeah.
Right.
If he survives a round and you get another, you don't get double turned, he has the chalice as well to heal back up, and heals at the end of combat. I think he's honestly just better at kind of getting into combat with some hordes and being hard to get a lot of hits back on him.
Sure, he's a good guy to go pin the edge of a big horde unit, right, where there's not going to be a lot of people piling in on him.
Yeah.
If properly protected in any way, he could certainly live in that case, especially if you have the chance to sort of get in on a horde where you're going to end up being on cover and hence get that bonus post charge times, right? The reality is, it's if there's a big block of 40 kind of strung out and he can just touch one side of it, there's not going to be a lot of things that will pile in and kill him super fast.
Yeah.
Especially if in the case where he's got that chalice, right?
Yep. And again, sometimes, it's not bad to have a hero that's, everyone targets and he's not that important.
Sure.
But
you just be a little distraction at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, my Luminarch was that, and it was delightful.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, so what but what it came down to time and time again was the battle line being durable and being where you needed them to be. There was one game against Domus that I lost completely because I didn't trust my battle line to hold the line against Ironjaws. If I had run them up and just parked them on, the big long line across those 3 center objectives, I don't know that he would have first turn probably, charged and done some damage, but they would have healed back up and then stuck around for the rest of the game.
Well, you do have one problem there.
What's that?
That's because orcs are the best. So you do need to think about that.
No. I mean, you are right though. The question is are they durable enough? And the reality is that as much as I love legions, I don't know that they're durable enough. Well, it sounds really silly given the regen, but like the current meta, I would say, is shifting towards armies that can do mass wounds against low armor targets. Like if you look at the last couple of the armies released, you have Sisters, you have Undead, and you have Nurgle. And a lot of Nurgle is like Plague Bearers and stuff like that. Or
or Blight Kings who are a nightmare if they come in a large enough unit, right? Because they're going to be pretty good at just blowing through that, especially if they're in their battalion that gives them rend, because then they really invert the skeleton shields.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I would say is that at the end of the day, what's going to end up happening is that it seems like the meta is moving towards, like, in order to perform well, you will need to have an answer towards mass troops.
Yep,
is what I would say. And the problem is that skeletons, if somebody has a hard answer to something like mass troops, like mass low armor wounds, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Legions has the ability to have multiple large groups, large units, in order to be redundant in that area. And because they can heal them back up, and if you do it right, I mean, you can have 43, models coming back, each turn or more. There's a couple of deployments where you put those 4 grave sites right next to, where you want to be on the board, and you've got 4 of those healing one unit, and so in Legion of Night, you got the potential of skeletons on a 3-up, if you're not dealing with a ton of rend, and and with that particular game, you only need them to be durable for a couple of rounds until Prince Vordre comes in and tanks whatever that main unit is that's going to take them out, right? Or you save the Blood Knights behind them, and not the Blood Knights aren't a little bit of a wet noodle sometimes, or just easy, but like the idea is they just need to last long enough for a number of hard hitting units to do some more work, right? Give them enough time to soften the army up so that they can't do as much against those units while they heal back up. And you're right. I mean, they're not. I don't think that they're the most durable unit in the game, but I don't think you need to be the most durable to be durable enough.
I agree. What I'm saying is that the armies that are going to move, like, I think the way the meta is moving itself, it will move towards armies that can deal with mass troops. Like, those are the lists that are probably going to be doing better. And I think that will hurt death in the long run. Because I think that the strongest death lists are those that are running large blocks of Graveguard and or skeletons.
Yep.
Well, so it's interesting because obviously I don't think you're completely wrong on any of that, but it'll be interesting to see how they fare. Like, don't forget, like Death has some pretty great debuffs, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it is very player dependent. Sure, like in the void, you're right that like a nightmare for all those skeletons is like, 40 witch elves, 40 tooled up witch elves plowing into them or whatever,
Yeah.
Or 30 tooled up witch elves plowing into them. Sorry. But that's going to be a lot of dead skeletons real fast.
Yep.
But again, that's assuming that that works out in the right way, like with the right pre debuffs,
Sure.
debuffs, or other actions or chaffing, and then you come around on them. Like the same is going to be true in reverse. Right. Like with a single debuff or buff spell on your skeletons, and them having the sort of turn up to strike first, that's going to be a giant pile of dead witch elves pretty fast.
Yep. Well, and that's the other strategy. The thing with the battle line for Death, especially skeletons, I think, and Graveguard, is that they can be that counter hammer, right? You can put a small unit in front of them to be this little tiny anvil that just crumbles, and then that unit's able to pile back in at full force. And do what it needs to do. And that's what the other unit that I had that was also, just an MVP was, unit of 10 dire wolves with a corpse cart, giving them a 4-up,
I love it.
They didn't need to be, it didn't matter which part of the field they were on really, and they could move fast and create, big, do a lot of board control without, with 10 models. So it was easy to move around, but, like they would often take the brunt of it. And then something else could hit him back, So there was plenty of, there were definitely times that you want to know what the hard counter is to Death Hordes. It's Grail Knights. So we'll hopefully see a resurgence of Grail Knights. Oh, wait.
You have a hard encounter with Grail Knights there?
I did in one of my test games. And I was talking to David Griffin. He's like, wait a minute. What? They don't do anything special against Death. No, they do something special against Death and demons now. So yeah, I had in one of my test games, I had Bretonnian to blow up my army really fast, and it made me. That's what made me really cagey against the Iron Jaws. I was like, oh no, these guys are going to get blown up. But I should have trusted in them because through every game, those units, there are some units that can come in and clean up a horde in one fell swoop.
Sure.
But unless you guys were talking a little bit about that one, if you want your whole army to just be about killing hordes, then you can, you'll definitely be a hard counter to any horde army, but you're going to get, paper rock scissored by some other unit, something else that's going to be able to avoid hordes or
sure. I mean, I don't know that I would say that's the entire focus, but yeah, I think it's interesting the units that are sort of resurgent or have interesting new
life
calculations. Yeah, new life. Yeah, that's funny puns. Things like Black Knights, right, which are actually fairly interesting in this new world where. There you get 5 of them for 120 points. It's 10 wounds for 120. It's not the greatest deal in the world, but when you look at the fact that like they have summonable and can have models put back in their units, okay, and against like stuff that doesn't have rend, they're on a 4-up save.
Yep.
Okay, right, like
you got. I mean, and the big thing in the Death Army is that there's so many things that just give you +1 attack. Right,
Yeah.
White Kings gives you +1 attack. Vampire Lords give you +1 attack. Nagash or there's a couple of command traits that give you +1 attack. And that's what
they're multi-attackers.
Yeah, that's what Brendan was talking about with his Black Knights. He just give them a ton of attacks and Van Hells, and they'd go in and they'd do a ton of work, and you were not expecting it because you've always heard that Black Knights are crap, right? So, I mean, and it's all about where you use them and how you use them, right? They're not going to be the answer to everything.
No, they're not a super hammer. Like they absolutely need to be tactically utilized. And the advantage is they are quite fast. when compared to, say, a lot of the things that you might have in an army that's utilizing a heavy amount of death rattle or something, right? Running around at 12 inches, it's no joke for and hitting, decently on the charge. I wouldn't call it great, but I would call it decent.
2 damage a pop.
Yeah, 2 damage a pop, sure, absolutely. So I think they're one of the units that I've actually like that, and the fact that they also have they've got the whole minimum 6-inch charge thing. They do the standard neg 1 bravery. Like, there's a lot of little things going on that make me like them for their points.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I feel like on the new math they're a pretty square deal. Blood Knights are the big losers to me, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, they were pretty hit and miss on whether or not they, sometimes they would, it was weird. Dorthu came in and smashed into him, and they survived. Like, he killed like one, and they turned around and popped him, with the help of, not even on a charge, right? And with, I think Prince Vordre helped them out, so like they didn't do a ton, but then, they went on to
they loosened him for Prince Vordre, right?
Right. And they went on to survive the rest of the game doing little tiny charges into, small units or whatever. But yeah, and I don't even care that much about the healing. It's that death shield that, when there's any rend, that they just become paper bags.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's ultimately, like, there's a lot of neg 1 rend floating around,
and cost. Like they're definitely a bit. They're just hard to fit things around. They take a lot of chunk in your list. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not all about like the wound to point ratio. Like, I feel that's often a bit of a like that can be a bit of a
misdirect.
Yeah, like, the how much you pay for your
Sky Wardens. We talked about this. Like,
yes.
6 wounds for 100 points Sky Wardens. That seems terrible, right? No, they were my MVP in every single game I played this last week.
Sure, I think about something like single models, like the Luminarch, which is like 11 wounds for 240, right? Yep. Like, that's, by a unit standard, that's a terrible ratio. But of course, that thing is, incredibly good. So you can't just look at that sort of cost ratio. But nonetheless, with a unit like Blood Knights, I do look at that and go,
Well, and the thing is, I mean, like, you look at things that swing, right? There's two major things that swing on the Blood Knights. One is their damage output.
Right.
If they're not charging, they're hitting on their 1 rend, 1 damage, as opposed to when they're charging and their D3 damage, which is still a swingy.
Which, like, even that is, becomes a very swingy number. Like, sometimes you'll roll well and you'll blow through something, and sometimes you just get a bunch of 1 damages.
So I mean, like, just when they're stuck in the grind, they're not more effective, much more effective than a bunch of skeletons, right?
Right.
And then the other is the shield, is that they're a 4-up base. But if you don't have rend, they're a 3-up. If you do have rend, they're a 5-up. I mean, it's like 1 rend equals 2 rend, right? And against an elite unit that you're paying that much for, that's, and the probably thing that probably play against me and is that I have them on large cav bases as opposed to light cav bases, so you're not getting not maximizing. They have large frontages for me and that sort of stuff, and there's no right or wrong in that currently. There's no ruling on what kind of base they're supposed to be on, but yeah.
All right, so
anyway,
no, you're fine. I've got a thing I want to discuss here.
Okay.
This was brought up in the Legions of Night group earlier.
Yeah.
And I found this to be a very interesting debate, and I thought I think you had a take on it there, but I want to get your take out there.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the discussion, what it was around, was Hex Wraiths, right? Mm-hmm. Versus Graveguard.
Yep.
Okay. Versus Vargheists.
Yep.
Now, the reason we're making this comparison is because 10 Graveguard has 10 wounds and they're 160 points, right?
Yep.
And Hex Wraiths have 10 wounds and they're 160 points. And Vargheists have what? Are they?
They're 4 wounds each,
right?
So
they have 12 and they're 160 points. So all pretty similar. All very similar roles. There are some minor difference here. Like, there's some different battle line stuff going on. Like if you're in Grand Host of Nagash, Graveguard become battle line. If you're in Night Haunt, Hexwraiths do, and Vargeist are never. But whatever. Who cares about all that? I'm not super concerned about all that.
Yeah.
But I do want to compare these 3 units because I feel like they all interestingly sit in the sort of like next step up elite troops in the undead, right? Yeah. They're not your battle line stuff. They're not your skeleton horde. They're not your dire wolves or whatever. These are sort of can be the
shock troops.
Yeah, your shock troops, your elite. I'm putting finger quotes around that for sure. In the death force.
Yep.
So So Eric, you've got an opinion on this, but go ahead and tell us your pick out of these 3. I think similar-ish units.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I'm looking at units, I'm always asking myself first, what do I want to do with it?
Yep.
Like not whether I can afford it or which, again, like you said, like point, like wounds per point kind of thing. But I'm like, what do I need to do in my army that I can't do with something else? I think the 2 that there's a distinct line between Graveguard and the other 2 because Graveguard are not mobile. So Graveguard are a punchy or are an anvil / and I think that so Graveguard are an anvil and a hammer, right? They've got a better save than skeletons, right? You can get them down to a 3-up in Legion of Night. If they're in a small unit of 10, you can put them in terrain down to a 2-up. I mean, that's pretty fantastic and then again, whatever, if depending on where they're at, they can be battle line. But then, you give them a little bit of a bubble wrap and they're hitting back and doing a lot of damage. So I think that separates them from the other 2 in terms of comparing them directly. Like, what do I want to spend money on? Hexwraiths and Vargeist are both very mobile. Pound per pound, Vargeist are doing more damage if they get to strike first. But Hexwraiths can probably weather if they don't get to attack first, they can probably weather it, right? And then regrow and hit back, right? So I see Vargeist as better at killing hordes, better at killing, battle line units. They're a -1 rend 2 damage, and every model that they kill, they get another attack. And so I think that it's just written for going against hordes. Whereas I think Hexwraiths are they're not a lot of damage, but they give the mortal wounds, which to me, why would you use mortal wounds on a horde unit? Like that never seems like the smartest place to use it because they don't have great saves anyway.
Sure.
So you use that on heroes, you use that on monsters, you use that on something else. So I think if you're monster hunting or if you're, especially since they can fly, and they can go through terrain, they can do all that kind of stuff. And then they do wounds when they move over stuff. I think you're trying to, move them into, charge them into something and then retreat them over top of them and then charge them into something else. Like, I just think that they're.
So what I'm hearing you say though, Eric, is that each have a different function.
Yeah.
One necessarily isn't better than the other.
Right. They're a bit of apples and oranges in essence. And I think the reason you pick one over the other is what are you, if you've already got an answer for hordes, then don't pick Vargeists. If you've already got an answer for killing elite or going up against rend stuff, then don't pick Hexwraiths, right? But I feel like you should put all of them. They could all go in your army and do completely different things.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll take the unpopular opinion that so I will say that I think that there is a winner here.
Yeah. I feel like my opinion was the most unpopular. So you might be.
I don't know. I think I think Tom has the safe opinion here of like, yeah, they have different purposes. I'll take the unpopular opinion. Hexwraiths are the best. If you're,
I don't think that's unpopular. I mean, I think like they're doing all the things. Like they're ignoring rend, they're doing mortal wounds, they're high mobility,
they're healing.
They're healing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like they just tick too many boxes. Like Graveguard have a use in a particular army in blocks of 30 or whatever. They're 30. Because they have a horde discount. And if you like, I don't see a use for them in anything other than that, to be honest. Okay, like in a very competitive force. Vargeists can fly, and I appreciate the 2 damage. I don't disagree that they are pretty good against like low armor hordes, but who gives a flying hoot? You've got a million things in your army that are good against like this. Death itself is pretty good against low armor hordes. Like you've got nothing but stuff to deal with that. We didn't need to bring a slightly different shaped can opener to an army of can openers, or whatever you want to say. Can opener is probably the wrong term because that sounds like I'm cracking heavy armor, but you get my point. We've already got a bunch of hammers. We didn't need another hammer that has a slightly different head on it. But hex wraiths are really interesting because they are like, they're not the toughest thing in the universe, but they're pretty freaking good and tough. And though they don't fly, I mean, they pretty effectively fly because obviously, well, I guess they do fly, don't they? Am I lying? Yeah, they do fly. What am I even saying? They're 12 inches and they fly. They didn't have wings. That was throwing me. But yeah, they fly. So they still have the same movement, and they can pass through models and deal mortal wounds. They can kick out mortal wounds on the attack. And I think that is actually super useful because although your magic phase is like, especially if you're rocking Nagash, is like the mortal wound-a-thon 2018.
Yep.
Right? Like, no doubt if Nagash is heading up your force, he's just like, he's Oprah for mortal wounds. Okay? Like, absolutely. Or if you're doing like a sacrament caster heavy army or something. But that being said, your troops, like the rest of your army, you often can't get magic to be exactly where you need it, where you need to use magic to target very specific things. It's nice to also have troops that can go crack tough eggs, right? And you don't have a lot of troops that do put out a decent mortal wound number. Like, I'm not counting things like freaking banshees and crap because it's too whatever. And I'm not counting a Terrorgeist scream because Terrorgeists go down like they're made of, like, they might as well be giant balloon animals.
Yep.
They just get punched and deflate, right? Way too fast. Not that those aren't fun, but hex wraiths have a uniquely tough refillable damage output. They can screen well. They're highly mobile. And I think that in the end, they can do the right amount of damage. Now, I agree. They're a waste against a horde unit. That's actually their worst fight, right? Because that's going to be exactly what punches through their armor. A mass number of attacks, right? What you want is a small number of attacks where you don't suffer from the law of large numbers and your 4-up breaks favorably for you.
Yep.
Right.
Just don't line them up with your 12 move against them.
Right. Or just ride through the horde unit and go charge something else. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that does make them the uniquely good choice. I think they are they're my most interesting sort of new unit from this, especially when you look at things like inclusion in the Legion of Night or something where you could be ambushing with them, right? And bringing them in from off table where suddenly they then obviously they're not moving that turn, but then nonetheless, you do that on a potential double, things get real interesting, right? Where suddenly they can be moving through back lines, mortal wounding and charging people, charging sensitive targets. Like you said, they're great hero killers, right? And they get real interesting when you can get them quickly behind the lines and start cracking those nuts that are hiding back there in a way that you might not be able to get your magic to do. 18 inches might not get you there. Right. So I think that hex wraiths are a pretty darn solid choice. That would be my argument.
What is the other unit in death that you would use to do that similar task? Prince Fordry, or
Well, he doesn't have a small
oh yeah,
he's too big. Like, that's the problem. Like, spirit hosts also take up a pretty small amount of space.
Yeah, they're
spirit host would be your other one. Like, you named it.
Yeah.
Like, not because you said we're talking about hex wraiths right now. We're not talking about spirit hosts.
Yeah, hex wraiths. Yes.
The spirit host would be the other one that would do a similar thing.
I guess. I mean, yeah, like with the right buff or something, but I don't know, man. I find spirit host supremely unreliable, is what I will say. The problem with the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon or the named version, Vordrai or whatever, is that in the end they're they're big bases, and they're such big targets that just like people suck toward them,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And also
they have a center of gravity on the battlefield.
yeah, like that's a thing. You know what I
But
mean?
I tell you though, it's a fantastic thing. Like,
Oh, I'm sure.
I want them to be targeted a lot of
Oh,
times.
sure.
You know, you want that heat off of your other things.
But that's exactly right. You want the heat on them and not on the thing that you're going to send in to assassinate a strategic target.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that death, and that's where I think you're right in that hex wraiths. There's nothing there. I don't think there is anything like them in the death army for assassinating or getting into the back line. You know, not unscathed, but you put a couple. You deploy a couple grave sites in the back. They're going to get into small spaces and be able to heal up and and do that a little bit. And so yeah, I mean, but that's where I think that though it's not a comparison to Vargeist, like it's not one or the other, like that.
No,
I would never be flipping one for the other.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think Sean in the chat mentioned harbingers, especially for ambushing is another potential, and I agree. They're actually harbingers.
They are wrecking balls.
Yeah, Morghast's harbingers who have the long charge, right, and the halberds are actually halberds, whatever. They got that big long pokey sticks. They're actually one of the more interesting units to me in the ambush scenario, right? Like I don't know that I care that much about the bonus they get out of the Grand Host of Nagash. Like I'm sure that seems like a nice saucy bonus, but I like them better where I have more interesting ambush options for them. If there's any limitation to them, it's that base 9-inch move versus that base 12-inch move. Now I know they've got the long ball charge, right? Like, which is awesome. No doubt that long ball charge is sweet coming in off of ambush. Like that is aces, man. Like super aces on an ambush move. But then after that, they're just not quite as mobile for me. It's interesting too because the hex wraiths can also pull an interesting double duty of riding forward and being like a heck of a interesting chaff wall.
Yep.
Right, because they can string out on them cav bases and actually then go from taking up relatively little space to taking up a relatively large line.
Yep.
And
Vargas can't chaff.
Right.
I mean, I've used them as chaff just because because they're mobile, and I love the models that I have for them. So they've tried to use them that utility and they just don't work.
You're saying they blow up?
They blow up easy.
They do blow up. Yeah, I think
they're
that's what
5
he's
up. I had one game against Sacrament. My Vampire Lord, my unit of 3 Vargeist, and my unit of 10 Direwolves all got Cursed of Years.
Yeah.
And then Prince Vordry shrugged it off. He's like, no. But,
he said, I ain't about that.
Yeah, but my opponent got 3 of those off. 3 turns getting that off. It was fantastic all the way down to 1. Anyway,
brutal.
All right. So,
yeah,
what you mentioned that. Let's talk about Magic because I feel like we've gone on for a while. We've been banging on about this for a while, but to me, we can't leave Death behind. We've talked a lot about different units and the hosts and stuff like that. Let's talk about Magic though, okay? Because I feel like it's a huge part of the army, not least of which because they have arguably the most powerful spellcaster in the game.
Yeah.
Who can head up their army and a whole legion dedicated to basically spell spam, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and Brendan's army was Nagash, the host of Nagash. So Nagash's spells are definitely a big part of that army. The second one, sorry, Sean's was Sacrament, I believe. So
I'm sure he'll correct us if you're wrong, but okay.
Yeah, and so Sacrament's big on those spells. I've faced a Sacrament army. I saw a lot of Sacrament there, where I saw I think 2 or 3 Nagashes, but I think I saw more Sacrament there. I don't think I saw any Legion of Blood.
How often were you tripping double casts?
Not that often. The vampire spells are 12 inches.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
There's some utility there in, again, kind of debuffing. And there's some utility there doing mortal wounds, but it doesn't. Arcane Bolt still kind of like rides up there with those. Like sometimes it's better to just do an Arcane Bolt and get D3. Some of those spells have a little more complex ways of getting. They cost a little bit more to cast, and they're just as like likely to get a 1 than 3. There's a couple of those where you're getting, here's another reason to, take like a Vampire Lord and ambush him in, is you get some of that, like the Amaranthine Orb, and you try and hit across the enemy's back line. The problem is when you're ambushing and doing those tricks, you're waiting until the next turn, right? The next time you get a turn. So if you ambush turn 1, you're possibly getting double turned, waiting 2 turns before you get to cast it. And they have moved, they've done whatever. So, I mean, like, there's a couple of things that the vampires spells can kind of do. There's the Vile Transference that I put on the prince, and I got to use that one time to kind of heal him up or another unit up. But, it's dependent on how much, you do D3 wounds, mortal wounds, and then you heal D3, whatever it is that you heal. So it's still not like, sometimes it's better to do an 18-inch Arcane Bolt or for him Quick Blood to give him +1 to hit and wound. So there's just a lot of choices, and often I was using Mystic Shield is still a powerful spell compared to some of these.
Sure. They're the basic lands of Magic. Like it's what everything else is balanced against. Like they're always going to have some value, right?
Yeah. And then the Lore of Death had a few more debuffs. There's a spell that can do -1 attack. There's another spell that can do -1 hit and -1 bravery, which can be really good if you're doing a bravery bomb. Those are often 18 inches. The Lore of Death is.
Yep.
So there's a more utility, but necromancers don't get horses anymore, so they're not mobile. You're sitting them in the back line, or I did one time where I ambushed my necromancer in corpse cart and pups somewhere. It wasn't that great. That was a practice game, I think. I'm trying to remember, but they're just unless you're running a Mortarch that can take the Lore of Death and they're going out and exposing themselves, it's difficult to use those spells to do any debuffing and that sort of stuff. So I think you really need Archon to have, he can cast further, right?
Right.
And so can Nagash. And so I think those two are the ones that really benefit from the spell lores, being able to take any of them and having, multiple, the biggest ranges on them. The small casters just don't have that unless, again, a necromancer in Sacrament has a further reach.
Yeah. Sean's list was Sacrament, Archon, Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, a Necromancer, 2x40 Skellies, 2x5 Wolves, heck yeah, Wolves, and 30 Graveguard. Yeah. So there you go. Again, still rocking the big number of bodies, but also, a heck of a powerful amount of magic there too. Like that's no joke. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how much the math on those spells changes when you have Archon or Nagash casting it, right? Yep. Nagash or Baby Nagash, as it were. Because, like, the other thing you didn't mention about a lot of the vampire spells is a lot of the good ones are on 7s.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if you're hard casting that with, say, your standard vampire lord, right, who can certainly pick that crap.
Yep.
Right? And, like, if you want to give your vampire lord Amaranthine Orb or whatever, which is just a heck of a backbreaker of a spell when it rolls your way.
Yep.
The problem is he's only going to on hard dice, he casts it successfully or roughly 60% of the time.
Yep.
That means if you try it every turn, which you won't because it's 12-inch range, but in a standard game, if you actually could try it every single turn, you'd fail it 2 out of the 5 turns.
Yep.
Right?
No,
straight up.
I mean, so most of the time I was dealing with either range or choice and reliability. I had my Necromancer had Morbeg's Claw. So the command traits for Legion of Night aren't like thrilling. You're not going like, whoa, this one's amazing. Like, I mean, so I picked Swift Swarm because I was like, I just need my general to move.
Sure.
but I took Morbeg's Claw for artifact, which gives +2 for the necromancer if he doesn't move or do anything that turn, and then the corpse cart is +1. So I was relying on a +3 just to get Mystic Shield off reliably, like and so if I needed those other ones, that's great. But then anything that's ambushing is out of range, so unless you're you're turtled, right?
Which really isn't the way you want to fight with, say, like a vampire lord on, whatever. Like, you're not turtling with that dude. He needs to be free roaming.
Necromancer running after him, going, wait
sure.
up.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. But like, and that being said, you take those same spells, you put them in the hands of Nagash, who's basically free casting them.
Yep.
Right. And suddenly those spells become way more scary. I mean, same with Archon. He's basically just as close, right? The math just shifts so hard in his favor to get those spells off.
Well, and if you're casting a bunch of spells each turn, right? So I was casting max 3. If you're casting a bunch of spells each turn, the chance of getting that 9 up, and you're making those lore spells more reliable, and you're casting more of the lore spells, which are the only ones that are affected by the 9 up. Mystic Shield isn't, or Arcane Bolt isn't,
right?
Or the War Scroll spells are not. So you're just putting the odds more in your favor of getting those doubles, and so it's the snowball of effectiveness.
Right. Yeah. I absolutely agree. I mean, double casting an Amarthine Orb is like a near religious experience. Like it's pretty amazing, especially if it rolls your way twice. That is to say, if you get them 4-ups to trip a couple different times, like, my God, it's like getting off of it's like Foot of Gorking, right? And having it roll 4-up like multiple times is what it could turn into. Because you will often on that 12-inch line be able to catch 3 units.
Yeah,
it's not uncommon. So when suddenly you've got 6 bites at that 4-up apple, that's a tasty apple. You're going to eat a lot of that apple. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. The most interesting spell to me that I don't, that I think is, I don't think it's underappreciated, but I really love it. I don't know that I hear a lot of people talk about it, but I suspect plenty of people use it. It might just fall down on the list because people go for the mortal wound stuff like the orb. But I really, really love Fading Vigor. Not because of its -1 from attacks characteristic, although that's certainly scary. It's the single dice when making a charge roll.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, you can fail even a 3-inch charge.
Yep.
Suddenly 33% of the time when you only roll 1 die.
It's a great way to keep people out of combat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It doesn't double tap as well, right? And that's another problem with it, because like oftentimes subtracting 2 from their attacks characteristic doesn't actually have an effect, right? Like they might be, because it's a minimum of 1, so you might just literally take the unit to mins,
right?
Benefit to, and they're already at a single die. So
unless it's a death unit that's got 2 times +1 attack.
Sure, there are certainly units where it would still affect them. I'm just saying often it's not gonna like. Not a whole lot of units in the game have 3 attacks sort of running around in their profile, but many have 2. There are plenty. I'm not saying it's none. I'm just saying it's not the most common thing. Whereas, doing things like, double tapping a Vile Transference or an Amarthine Orb or something like that is just stupid good.
Yep.
The other interesting thing about Nagash with these spells is that, and we should talk about Big Papa Nagash here before we exit this out. We need to close this up soon.
Yeah.
But that guy forces such interesting choices that if you don't kill him, if you don't have the heat to kill him in like a turn, or you're not on the chance for the double, don't even bother. Just don't even touch him, because he's gonna just heal himself back to full. Like, that dude will come back from just darn near dead to full life
every time.
Yeah, it's scary how fast he can get wounds back.
Yeah.
Right.
The spell that I wished I could, I was trying to find the tools to pull off, was Spectral Grasp.
The terrain grabber.
Yeah, taking terrain and just messing up what somebody's move can do, and like what they're able to do in that time, and again, keeping them stuck. So if you had a couple necromancers and able to to move forward and cast that and just kind of mess with things, right? Anytime you can just disrupt a whole phase for somebody.
Sure. Sean Clark just mentioned very quickly that you can choose 2 different units with your double taps. Yes, that's correct.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't mention that. In my head, I should have said this. In my head, there was only 1 unit I could target with the spell, right? But I didn't.
Which felt like the case often.
Yeah, like it just in my head, I was thinking there's 1 unit I need to keep out of being able to charge, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't. So sorry, I hadn't constructed that example for everybody, but yes, you're absolutely correct. With the double tap, you're not forced to target the same thing. So yeah.
Which is fantastic.
You may often do so just because, hey, it's fun to super kill things, but you don't have to. Yeah. I
appreciate all those perspectives, Sean.
It is like, I think that, to me, I'll tell you what I think with death. Here's my summary thought, then I'll give both of you a chance to give yours, and then we'll close this up. My thought with death is that all of these were known quantity units, right? Like, that is to say, there wasn't a totally new. There's no zero. Wow, I shouldn't say it. Prince of Order is new. Like, for the most part, these are units we know, right? But they act in a lot of new ways, and I'm not sure at this point, even almost 2 months in, basically.
Right. Yep.
That people have really cracked everything in this book, right? As far as all the synergies go, because there's so many different ways you can put the pieces of this puzzle together. That I see a lot of very different lists floating around still. I think death has a lot of gas in the engine that people have yet to discover, would be my ultimate summation.
Yeah.
I think here, let me put it this way. Let's say Adepticon had been another month and a half from now.
Yep.
Something like that. I think you would have seen more than 15 death armies.
I would agree with that.
Yep. Yeah. I don't think it would be like a quarter. It's never going to be like Order and Chaos are just too big right now. But I think it would have been up more to around 20, 20 and change, right? So, for what it's worth. All right. Tom, we'll let Eric finish us out. What's your summation thought?
No, I agree. I think that there's a lot of potential there. I just it just feels like to me, whenever I build death armies, that something is still lacking, and I don't know what that is. Does that make sense? And maybe it's because I'm not doing Legion of Night. It's maybe because I'm leaning towards Sacrament or Legion of Nagash. But and I think it's mobility that I really struggle with. Yeah, I don't know. Something just like I can't get all the tools that I want. And I know part of what's missing is ranged attacks.
Sure.
And that range threat, this is coming off of an army that I just played where I had, spell threat, I had range threat, I had melee threat, all of the threat.
Sure.
And now with death, I really feel the absence.
Outside of Big Papa, Nagash, or Sacrament, and doing it in your magic phase.
Yeah.
It's just not a thing that's really present.
I had range threat and magic threat. And
although you must admit this is on an order of magnitude that's a bit higher.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. So I don't know. I just I haven't cracked the code yet for death, is what I would say.
Yeah.
And there's some I think that there are definitely super hard lists out there. I think they're going to be non-intuitive though, is what I would say.
Yeah.
I agree with Caleb. If you can't kill 9 Skyfires in one turn, why even bother? All right.
Or 18.
All right.
You know all about that, don't you, Caleb?
Eric, your final thoughts there. Take us home, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that came out of the book initially and that we're still suffering from is complexity. Because and the reason I think it's hard to crack is because there's even deploying your grave sites. There's so many different strategies, I think, yet to be discovered on using that. And I think that there's more psychology in this army than there are in some other armies, in terms of just trying to do something that causes your opponent to react. As I mentioned, I feel like ambush is just a tool even if you bring them on your own side or on a flank close to your own territory, in your own territory, like I did that after a while. As I was like, okay, well, I just need them over here. Like, it still is a psychological game, and it forces the opponent to do something, to react to it. And I think that in the Graves do the same thing, that there is mobility for even your battle line units if you're willing to put them in the grave, and then you get the first turn, you ride up with a White King super fast, and you or Prince of Ordrite 14 inches run, and you pull up 60 zombies or 40 skeletons or whatever. Like, there's that you can cover the whole board and be anywhere you want to be with them, but that just means you've got all the choices sometimes. And so I think because, like you said, we've still got the same units. We're still sometimes stuck with, okay, how do I use I've always used zombie this way, I've always used skeletons this way. Like, I think that the options for how you use them has changed so much that I think we are going to see some creative ways. I mean, like, Nagash and a whole bunch of skeletons doesn't seem like that much variety, but I think there's so much variety in how you could play that same army just because of grave sites. And so I think that you're right, that there's so much to crack. Maybe not necessarily from a list writing point of view, but from a generalship point of view. And so I think that this is an army that I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I made it higher than I thought I would, but again, I didn't fight any of the top armies. Like, I fought a Zilflin, and threw him off psychologically. But I didn't fight any, Zinch. I didn't fight any Nurgle. I didn't fight any Stormcasts. So I don't know what I personally would have been able to do against those. I'm not an expert on what the army is going to do against those on default, but I think. But I think in generalship, I think I think the tools are there, but I think, like you said, is like, where are the tools? Like, which are the tools? But I mean, I felt some of the same thing when I was trying to run, Soulblight and some of my favorite, some of your favorite hard hitting things. You just can't take them all. And I think it pushes you towards, Death Rattle. I mean, I think Death Rattle is where it pushes you to the most. And so how do you use Death Rattle in your Death Army? So there may be, but again, that might be the obvious choice because there's so many things that point you towards Death Rattle. So there's probably something else underlying.
Well, it sounds like we're not done with death then yet. So we'll talk about death more in the future, both the army and the amorphous concept. Yep. But at any rate, Eric, thank you, sir, for joining us tonight. Awesome. Appreciate your review, and congratulations. Congratulations to Sean and to Brendan. So awesome work. We will, of course, be back next week because, as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.